se rendre assez rapidement ce matin sur les lieux mêmes de l'explosion.
On y fabrique des engrais à partir d'ammoniac.
It's happening in your world, it's happening in my world.
Where are the protests? I don't see any protests.
A sea of people with one goal, to save the planet.
I want my country to be a part of the solution, not the problem.
Do you hear me? Can you hear us? We are angry.
Ik hoop dat mensen milieubewuster worden en dat de klimaatcrisis bij iedereen een prioriteit wordt.
All of us have the responsibility to preserve our beautiful earth.
Je ne pense pas, en tant que citoyenne isolée, être responsable des décisions prises par des politiciens censés protéger le bien commun.
It's not only us who live on this earth.
We are the majority and we demand change!
What if we focused our collective attention, just for a minute, on what young people around the world have to say, on what they feel, on what they demand? Too many times have we heard governments and experts lecturing us on these problems. Though it is we, young people of the earth, who will have to deal with the consequences of climate change. The system, as we have known it, is on the verge of collapse. This is your word. It is suffering. We are suffering. There is just one simple question. How much longer can we carry on?
We now see that the seasons have changed. This year we had very cold winters. Even here in northern Sweden, it was relatively unusual. We had like a lot of snow and a snowstorm as well, so that doesn't really happen that often. And back in Germany, we had an unusual cold winter with minus 20 degrees Celsius, which is not usual for where I'm from. Years before that, we had warm winters, which had impact on the economy as well, or people who work in the winter tourism, because there's no snow, there's no tourists coming. People fear for their, financial stability.
La question du changement climatique s'observe également dans mon pays, au Bénin ici. Et actuellement, on est en février et généralement, en ce temps-ci, il fait un peu chaud. Mais le changement climatique, depuis peu, nous constatons qu'en fait, qu'au lieu de voir le soleil, c'est la pluie. Actuellement, il pleuvait depuis le matin jusqu'à cette heure-ci. Et nous ne savons pas encore ce que demain va donner.
Environmental justice is an issue that affects all of us. It's real. We look at the sharp rise in extreme weather cases, and even in our own country, in Taiwan, we are having hotter summers, more heat strokes and colder winters, more cold-induced strokes and blood clots in the news, etc. That's not to mention the plastic within the very seafood that this island relies on. It's quite shocking to say.
Personalmente ritengo che l'ingiustizia ambientale sia una delle principali, se non la principale questione che la nostra generazione è chiamata ad affrontare e risolvere. L'ingiustizia ambientale, dalla difficoltà di accesso alle risorse fino ai grandi disastri ambientali come le grandi inondazioni o gli incendi inaspettati, ha come principale conseguenza quella di andare a creare nuove ingiustizie sociali oppure andare ad acuire quelle già esistenti, quelle preesistenti, motivo per cui nessuno deve assolutamente sottovalutare questo ingente problema. Un'altra importante conseguenza dell'ingiustizia ambientale è la creazione di una nuova categoria di rifugiati, che sono appunto i migranti ambientali, cioè tutte quelle persone, tutti quei soggetti che sono costretti a lasciare la loro regione d'origine a causa di quelli che sono dei cambiamenti climatici.
작년 여름 한국은 유례없는 장마를 맞이했습니다. 9년 뒤 2030년 한국의 300만 명의 주거지가 물에 잠긴다고 합니다. 2050년 전 세계 10억 명의 주거지가 물에 잠긴다고 합니다. 내가 지금까지 살아왔던 곳과 현재 살고 있는 곳이 10년 뒤, 30년 뒤는 사라질 수도 있습니다. 난민이 될 수 있다고 생각조차 못하던 내가 기후 난민이 되어 주거권, 생존권을 위협받으며 말이 통하지도 않는 나라에서 떠돌게 될 수도 있습니다.
I remember when we used to have World Earth Day and everyone would turn off their lights for an hour. This was a big thing for a while back then. Like, I don't know, 10 years ago, my parents have like a little shirt that says like, turn off all your lights and on 1 hour. We don't do that anymore, and I'm not sure if it's because it died out or, I don't know. It felt for a moment that we were all in solidarity about one thing, which was our planet. And I think that was very, I don't know, I'm a bit nostalgic for it. Okay, moving on.
Due to climate change, the autumns here have gotten warmer and it rains more during the season. Then, when the temperature drops and it gets colder, the rain freezes on the ground and creates an ice layer over the most important winter grazing food for the reindeers, which is ground lichen. The reindeers dig through the snow to find the ground lichen, and if the lichen gets locked under a layer of ice, then the grazing becomes inaccessible. This can lead to the reindeers wandering off for many kilometers to find food. And it's not just the climate that affects the grazing resource. A study from 2016 found that in areas which used to be lichen-abundant forests, the ground lichen has declined with 70% over the last 60 years, which the researchers assume are because of forestry.
Some of the most famous products from Nazilli are olive, figs, and cotton. Climate change has hurt all three of them. Because of heat waves during the months of April and May, plants of these products dry out, and that leads to fewer crops, which in turn increases the price of the produce that we get. And this hurts both the farmers and the consumers financially. Figs and olives also suffer from the lack of rain.
What's makaming?
Brasil teve início com o descobrimento do país, que teve seus recursos naturais utilizados de maneira predatória, incluindo o pau-brasil, árvore que deu nome ao nosso país, mas que hoje corre risco de extinção. Isso demonstra que a falta de preservação sempre esteve presente na nossa história, devido aos ciclos econômicos, principalmente o ciclo do café, qual foi um dos maiores responsáveis pela intervenção das paisagens naturais brasileiras, através de queimadas de áreas florestadas, como a Mata Atlântica. Isso ainda persiste, infelizmente, pela negligência governamental. Na Amazônia, o desmatamento teve início com a instalação ilegal de empresas madeireiras e se intensificou com o crescimento da indústria agropecuária, que busca por territórios para plantio e criação de gado. Já o Pantanal teve cerca de 30% de seu território consumido por chamas, que ocasiona a morte de animais e vegetação. Já o Nordeste é assolado pela seca constante e tem cerca de 75% de seu território com algum foco de seca. E isso afeta não só a população, mas como também a fauna e flora.
As we know, when we talk about nature, everything is interconnected. Any small change in its fragile balance can lead to damage on our biosphere, climate, and of course, human activities. The food we eat, the energy we use, and the air we breathe are totally dependent on the nature balance. The fossil fuels we burn directly affect the climate, leading to extreme natural events, such as droughts that decrease the agriculture productivity. With less productivity, more area is required to produce the same amount of food, advancing the deforestation of protected places such as the Amazon.
Deforestation is one of the key issues faced by palm oil industry, especially in Indonesia, where rainforests contain high level of biodiversity and home to globally significant carbon reserves. In Indonesia, fires are set to clear forested lands to make way for palm oil production. All of this unleashes massive amount of carbon into the air. Palm oil plantation destroys millions of acres of forested land, created billions of tons of carbon pollution, and kill endangered wildlife like orangutan, rhinos, tigers, and elephants. This is a direct result of forest fires and conversion of woodlands for palm oil cultivations. All of this make palm oil industry one of the worst environmental offenders on planet.
왜 악당 국가라고 하냐면 한국 기업들 몇몇이 인도네시아에 진출해서 팜유 농장, 공장을 잔뜩 세운 일이 있어요. 팜유로 우리나라 국민들이 즐겨 먹는 라면, 과자, 초콜릿 그런 식품들, 제품들을 만들 수 있는데 그런 걸 얻기 위해서 인도네시아로 진출한 거죠. 거기에 주로 팜나무가 있으니까. 그런데 그거를 개발하려고 화정개간을 하기도 했대요. 어떤 기업은. 주민들은 약속했던 보상도 제대로 받지 못하고 그런 환경오염과 주거권이 침해당하는 그런 일들을 마주해야 됐던 거예요.
L'inquinamento in genere mostra i suoi effetti più negativi sulle fasce più fragili della popolazione, come gli anziani. È da diversi decenni che si ipotizza una correlazione tra l'inquinamento atmosferico, uno stato infiammatorio del sistema nervoso ed un aumentato rischio di malattie neurodegenerative, come l'Alzheimer. Un contesto inquinato, tuttavia, non è un fattore predisponente solo nei soggetti anziani, e infatti a tutte le età si è esposti ai danni che un ambiente inquinato può comportare. In diverse patologie, quindi, a parità di predisposizione genetica, di stile di vita e patologie pregresse, può fare la differenza il contesto ambientale in cui si vive. A causa della stratificazione del rischio, individui che vivono in zone inquinate affrontano rischi maggiori di sviluppare malattie neurodegenerative, neuropsichiatriche, cardiovascolari e respiratorie.
Mongolia is one of the most air and soil polluted countries in the world, even though we have a low population compared to our neighbor China. A right to a healthy and safe environment of the citizens of Ulaanbaatar has been infringed severely due to air and soil pollutions. Policymakers have explained these pollutions as a result of unplanned gas districts, which are dwelling areas with traditional round felt dwellings and houses without full social engineering infrastructure. In the name of combating the air, soil pollutions, as well as heavy smog that lingers in the winter, the authorities introduced and have implementing so-called urban redevelopment agenda. Although this agenda and its project aim to reduce environmental pollutions and to improve the living conditions of citizens, still as of today many families, including their children's right to adequate housing, is seriously violated, as some of them rendered homeless. Therefore, we, as youth of Mongolia, are demanding climate justice. At the same time, we urge the government of Mongolia to revise its laws and policies to make sure they are in line with international human rights, norms, and standards in order to avoid violate human rights, particularly the right to adequate housing. Again, urgent action is needed against climate change.
In fact, Taiwan is ranked the 53rd most polluted country out of 220 that were assessed. And although some air pollution is caused by China, 70% is domestic.
A study was conducted of microplastics in Taiwan, and researchers found that 44% of tap water had plastic specks. Seawater is also found to be heavily polluted with microplastics. Ingestions of these microplastics can result in serious health issues such as lung injuries and physical toxicity. People in Taiwan also have a high level of cadmium in their bodies overall compared to other countries. Cadmium is a metal that is used in the manufacture of batteries and is contaminating our water sources due to companies opening mines to harvest these metals.
환경부에 따르면 지난해 국내 월 평균 플라스틱 폐기물의 발생량은 22,700톤에 달했다고 합니다. 마스크의 재료인 부직포의 원료는 폴리프로필렌입니다. 일회용 용기나 생수병 뚜껑 등에 사용되는 플라스틱과 같은 종류입니다. 땅에 묻어도 썩는데 450년 이상이 걸리고 만약에 태우게 된다면 다이옥신과 같은 유해물질이 배출되어 대기가 오염되기 마련입니다.
Several areas in Indonesia have a very high level of river pollution. And Asian Development Bank in 2008 said water pollution in Indonesia causes losses of 45 billion rupiah every year. The biggest problem of river pollution comes from household waste, which is divided into two types, black water and grey water. Then continued wastewater from industrial and domestic products. At least 1.3 million cubic meters of household liquid waste from the 22 million Jabodetabek population are thrown away into rivers.
Los conflictos más grandes, sociales y de medio ambiente que he presenciado en los últimos años ha sido el poco acceso que tenemos a espacios de esparcimiento y espacios públicos que sean espacios también pensados en la naturaleza. Yo soy de una ciudad muy grande que es la Ciudad de México, y en la Ciudad de México la conocemos como una de las ciudades más contaminadas del país. Sin embargo, hace 5 años, al mudarme al estado de Yucatán, me encontré esta nueva interrogativa de por qué, viviendo en uno de los estados con más riqueza natural y riqueza de medio ambiente en el país, vivimos en una sociedad y en una estructura social que no está adaptada para convivir con el medio ambiente. Esta ciudad cada vez ve más plazas comerciales, cada vez ve más parques científicos, cada vez va más crecimiento económico, científico y social, y sin embargo, estamos matando al medio ambiente para poder tener ese crecimiento económico, científico y social.
Turkey remains in the list of 6 countries that haven't approved the Paris Agreement yet. This lacking of policies is concerning because the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry's Meteorological Service reports that some Turkish cities are experiencing serious drought levels.
한편으로는 또 이제 한국은 미세먼지가 중국 쪽에서 굉장히 많이 들어오는 편이에요. 그걸로 논쟁도 되게 잦은데 사실 우리 주변에서도 탄소 배출과 동일한 원인들을 통해서 미세먼지가 많이 만들어지고 있고 이게 기후변화로 인해서 제트기류가 계속 오작동을 하게 되면 바람을 타고 바다로 나가지 못하고 계속 국내 대기에 쌓이게 될 거란 말이죠. 그럼 우리 건강도 나빠지고 한국 환경은 더 안 좋아지겠죠.
Masih banyak dari mereka yang mengalami ketakutan setiap harinya hanya karena dampak dari perubahan iklim. Iya, setiap harinya. Perubahan iklim yang membuat tingkat air laut terus menaik dari tahun ke tahun, membuat mereka takut untuk kehilangan tempat tinggal mereka yang telah mereka tinggali sejak kecil.
Unlike in the past couple of years, countless typhoons would hit Taiwan annually, which was crucial for the island's water supply. Climate change has altered air pressure patterns in the Pacific Ocean, which affects both the formation and course of these typhoons. Although typhoons are destructive and considered by many as a nuisance, they are something that the Taiwanese people have spent generations getting used to, and they are considered a normality. The lack of typhoons have caused massive droughts in the south of Taiwan.
The habitat of wild animals has increased due to climate change. Humans have invaded the existing habitats of wild animals, increasing the likelihood of contact between wild animals and humans. Human contact with wild animals will soon lead to the emergence and spread of new infectious disease.
As tragédias que ocorreram com o rompimento das barragens do Vale do Rio Doce, em Mariana e em Brumadinho servem como um alerta para que medidas mais eficazes de segurança sejam tomadas.
Novembro de 2015 e janeiro de 2019 serão marcados por uma enxurrada de lama que causou destruição por onde se passou aqui em Minas Gerais.
Em Mariana, pessoas ficaram desabrigadas, a água ficou indisponível, 19 pessoas perderam suas vidas e muitos danos ambientais irreversíveis foram causados. Uma cobertura de cimento e asfalto se formou depois da lama despejada e isso impediu o desenvolvimento de várias espécies animais e devastou muitos ecossistemas. O rompimento da barragem afetou o Rio Doce, que abastece várias cidades, e a lama no rio causou a morte de organismos como peixes e algas por falta de oxigênio e obstrução das brânquias.
It's very unfair that my generation is suffering from the actions of the previous generations. And I know it's only gonna get worse. I have to say I'm a bit pessimistic about the future, but I don't know what the next generation will face if we are already seeing the effects of climate change. But I still believe we can make the change.
In our daily life, we are currently using water that is drilled from 150 meters below the ground. This well drilling process also hurts the environment because we are using water that trees are supposed to be using. and it is also not a renewable source. So when we have consumed all the water that is at the 150 meter level, we will have to drill even deeper, and there's just no end in sight for this.
Scarcity. There's limited things in the world, and at some point we're going to run out of things to extract from the earth, and it's ridiculous because we understand that we need resources, and one day it's not going to be there. And I think that the issue with capitalism related to climate change is that we don't see it as a people problem, we see it as a profit problem. And when we are attempting to extract as much profit as we can from the earth, from those resources, from the work, it's all exploitation. And the reason that we're not really taught to understand that is exactly because people don't want us to be critical about this. People don't want us to think, is the free market, is something that efficient, really that equal, really that good at all, We're trained to think these things because we've always been taught that it's the right way, right? Freedom. But I don't think that this translates into freedom if you're putting profit over people. That's why I think we should really see this from this kind of very macro perspective, that the climate crisis and a host of other issues they're not just individual things. They all relate to each other, and they all stem from the same huge crisis that we have on our hands, which is capitalism, and how it is by design, made to exploit, to extract, and to maximize profit.
What has been done isn't enough. Our mayor, our district council members, they are the reason why we are angry. They claim they care so much for the people in the city and the environment, and that they're doing everything they can. Well, if you care so much, then why would I be here speaking about this issue? And if you've done everything you could, why does the earth continue to burn? Why are the oil and gas facilities in the city still in operation? Especially incredibly close to our communities. Our government has prioritized the use of public land for oil wells over the people and the environment.
Sometimes I think that people are saying that we used to live this way in the past as well. It was always like this. So we keep living this way if it works. But actually it doesn't work. We just don't maybe see the effect right now.
Bom, se a gente levar em consideração todo o processo histórico do Brasil, toda a destruição dos nossos biomas que são realizados, desde o nosso descobrimento, vamos dizer assim, fica claro que o maior responsável para que isso continue é a impunidade, E ultimamente o que a gente tem visto é que essa impunidade tem aumentado, principalmente porque os nossos legisladores e o nosso governo não têm interesse em mudar essa situação, muito pelo contrário.
So I think first message is for our government. I think the government should be willing to hear the educated, the scientists, the youth and society. In Indonesia, most of our environmental problems were caused by brutal and irresponsible development programs with main purpose to better economic prosperity, they said. But instead of better economic development, this program being so destructive, especially for communities around the industry. The problems such like poor waste management and then displacement of settlements or agricultural lands and unbalanced ecosystem of biological creators haunted us daily. The disaster, and it brought disaster like floods and landslides.
You have to keep your eye on the prize. You have to remember who it is that you're targeting. And that is the wealthy corporations that are doing all of this. They might throw out little things here and there. They might say, oh, if you do a little bit of recycling, you'll do it, you'll save the world. You have to remember that they are a distraction. They are distracting you from what they're doing. always remember that they are the ones who are doing the most damage, and you can change what they are doing if you push for it.
Si les jeunes se réunissent dans les rues pour manifester au lieu d'aller étudier, c'est parce que vous ne faites pas votre boulot. Arrêtez de dire que la jeunesse est courageuse. On aurait préféré ne pas avoir à l'être. Mais on se retrouve avec 200 ans d'histoire industrielle et climatique à gérer, et ce poids sur nos épaules est lourd.
My message to you is to wake up. Wake up! Look around! None of this should be normal! Stop dreaming about the economy you're envisioning, because I hate to break it to you, there will be no future for the economy if we don't act now.
The government only provide landfill to fill up the garbage. Meanwhile, Lamongan can produce more than 80 tons every day. As we know that if you want to build a landfill only to collect the garbage, of course we need like a large wide land, and I think that's the part of inefficiency of land use.
In 1979, the Taiwanese government collected 8,800 metric tons of municipal solid waste a day. In 1993, Taiwan only collected 70% of its trash, while the rest polluted the environment. This caused the country to gain the nickname Garbage Island.
A tragic and symbolic episode took place in Seveso, a small town close to Monza. In 1976, a chemical company dispersed about 20-30 kilos of dioxin in the atmosphere and the soil. This negligence caused dangerous consequences to the local population, such as partial births and mainly genetic malformations in unborn babies and for coming generations. Nowadays, one common environmental crime is the proper collection, transport, recovery, and disposal of waste. According to Lega Ambiente, an Italian environmental NGO, in Lombardy have been stated 461 crimes regarding the legal dispersal of garbage known in 2019.
Access to clean drinking water is a human right. We shouldn't have to spend money on tools to be able to access a basic necessity. The result of mining and littering from our older generations is affecting and will continue to affect the quality of our water for years to come.
Waste is often the third largest source of emissions in cities, after buildings and transport. Solutions can include eliminating all single-use and non-recyclable items, such as plastic, and maximizing on reusing materials and resources, and finding inefficiencies within the waste management system through research, and working on creating a more sustainable waste management system.
Historicamente, as terras indígenas são áreas que protegem o ambiente, que protegem as matas, protegem os ecossistemas, além de serem um direito dos povos originários. Mas, infelizmente, os dados colhidos aqui no Brasil têm mostrado que esses territórios tradicionais estão sendo usurpados explicitamente. O Brasil, em 2019, foi palco de uma das maiores tragédias ambientais do mundo, quando incêndios criminosos eles mataram e destruíram grande parte dos territórios tradicionais dos povos originários.
A gente vê aí que o Brasil é o terceiro país que mais mata ambientalistas no mundo. Então isso significa que as poucas pessoas que tentam mudar essa situação acabam sendo mortas, especialmente indígenas, né, tentando proteger suas terras de garimpo ilegal, de madeireira e de outras coisas que possam prejudicar aquele aquele ambiente, aquele bioma, eles acabam sendo mortos, suas famílias são ameaçadas, seus familiares são mortos.
Responsible mining also has a huge impact of daily life of nomadic herders in terms of nature and ecology. Two fundamentals are needed for successful herding: pasture and water. Due to pasture degradation, shortage of water, and dried wells, herders are forced to leave cattle herding, the only livelihood they depend on to live. But it's hard for the herders have to support themselves and have to survive any other ways without their cattle. Because of irresponsible and unregulated mining and its negative impacts, the only nomadic culture in the world is about to at stake.
Social justice in Guatemala is something that is very prevalent in our society and should be fixed, because we have a very marked racial injustice or gender injustice going on in our country, where Indigenous people are treated really unfairly by the Guatemalans that have European descent blood. These people that have European descent blood tend to have all the political and economical power in our country, which impacts a lot when the country is passing a lot of the domestic policies that we have here, where most of them favors the European descent Guatemalans, whereas the indigenous people have a disadvantage in this society because their rights are very limited and they're very underrepresented in the Guatemalan government.
I belong to the Sami people, which is Europe's only indigenous people. Our land is called Sápmi, and it stretches over large parts of northern Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the Kola Peninsula in Russia. I would like to tell you about a complicated situation that me and my family are facing. We all know that in order to mitigate climate change, we have to produce more renewable energy. But it shouldn't have to be on the expense of my family's reindeer grazing lands. Right now, a wind power company wants to build a windmill park on our reindeer's calving ground, where they come each year to give birth. If the company would be allowed to establish a park there, the reindeers would be enabled to be in the area. In turn, this would heavily impact my family's reindeer herding, because with the already limited grazing lands, we cannot afford to be without this area. So, we aren't against wind power as a source of energy, but we have to stand against the establishment of a windmill park on our traditional lands. In Sweden, there is an excess of electricity in the north of Sweden and a shortage in the south of Sweden. So I believe that more windmills should be built in southern Sweden, closer to the end user.
Indigenous communities are often almost never given the proper resources and aid that they're due. A majority, for example, of indigenous communities in the world are below the poverty line. And because they are so entwined with the environment, they no longer have places to look for food. Not only that, but they can't buy food. And the alternative, of course, is government support systems. And that is the best alternative to take care of them. But oftentimes, these government services are insensitive or insufficient.
Traditional knowledge on conservation practices, ecological sustainability, livelihood systems, and weather forecasting, Indigenous people indeed play a crucial and significant role in aiding with the mitigation of climate change. Providing the necessary aid to Indigenous communities, not only in Taiwan, but also on an international level, will bring us one step closer in the fight against inequality amidst the times of social and environmental crises.
Justice for our planet and justice for all people are two profound conversations that are happening simultaneously, but often in different rooms. If you look closer, you can see that they are more dependent one on one another than you may have thought. Issues that impact the environment have impacts on the people who live there as well.
Creo que la injusticia social y la injusticia ambiental se relacionan en todo momento. No podemos entender una sin la otra, porque necesitamos ver cómo la injusticia ambiental impacta de manera diferenciada a los grupos que se encuentran en situación de vulnerabilidad. Un ejemplo muy claro es cómo el cambio climático ha afectado muchas zonas y que debido a todos los cambios drásticos de temperatura, muchas personas se han obligadas a desplazarse dentro de sus países. Hay personas que inclusive se han visto forzadas a huir de los mismos. Y también podemos ver cómo se relaciona con la injusticia social porque vemos cómo los mismos gobiernos, los mismos estados no están tomando las medidas adecuadas ni para recibir a las personas que están siendo refugiadas como consecuencia del cambio climático, ni tampoco para atender a las mismas personas que se han desplazado dentro de sus territorios por cuestiones climáticas.
In Malaysia's very, very frequent water cuts, it's not just about the very obvious advantage that middle to upper class communities have, like having easier access to water. It goes more than that. It is also about being able to gain access prior to the water cut so that preparations can be made. It's about being prioritized when the water does come back, and it's also being able to have the choice in order to travel elsewhere where the water cut does not affect. And to an extent where some of them would also have to collect water from the rain. And thankfully where I lived, it rained quite a lot, and that was also kind of what me and my family did. And how we did that was that we just put empty buckets outside at the edge of our roof so that water would kind of just flow in, and then we would bring it in and we would boil them so that it would be clean and we could be able to use them for our daily usages.
Namun hal tersebut masih saya katakan cukup beruntung, karena mereka diberi waktu untuk menyelamatkan hal tersebut. Di lain sisi, masih banyak dari mereka yang bahkan tidak punya waktu untuk menyelamatkan apa yang berharga bagi mereka. Bahkan mereka tidak punya waktu untuk menyelamatkan diri mereka sendiri ketika bencana alam itu datang. Oleh karena itu, saya berpendapat bahwa isu perubahan iklim ini harus kita tangani bersama terlepas apapun latar belakang kita, baik itu agama, bangsa, dan lain sebagainya. Mungkin ketidakadilan tersebut tidak dapat kita rasakan secara langsung. Atau mungkin kita yang cukup beruntung karena tinggal dan lahir di tempat yang jauh dari tempat resiko bencana alam. Akan tetapi, tidak semua manusia memiliki nasib yang sama. Kita mungkin beruntung, tapi teman-teman kita tidak.
Тиймээс бид уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтийн сөрөг үр нөлөөг бууруулах, ирээдүйн хойчин эрхийг хамгаалах чиглэлээр олон нийтийн хандлага мэдлэгийг нэмэгдүүлэх зорилгоор активизм өрнүүлж, олон нийтийн арга хэмжээнүүдийг зохион байгуулж байсан.
Et déjà, c'est quoi l'éducation au développement? Et c'est une éducation qui permet aux jeunes de prendre conscience de la réalité du monde dans sa globalité, bien sûr, tout en posant des choix justes, équitables, des choix qui tiennent vraiment compte de tous les aspects, afin que ces combats-là puissent vraiment bénéficier à tout le monde, que ce soit sur la question environnementale, sociale, agricole et j'en passe.
I believe that we need to adopt a bottom-up approach. What I mean by that is that climate action must start from the municipal level and build its way up, rather than the other way around. In a bottom-up approach, major cities such as Toronto play a huge role in climate action. I believe that Toronto needs to pursue aggressive climate action by focusing on 3 areas: minimizing waste, investing in clean transit, and conserving green space.
Y creo que una forma muy importante es la incidencia que podemos tener y sobre todo que nosotras como juventud estar siempre al tanto de lo que pasa en nuestro entorno. Entonces yo creo que esa es una forma como herencia que tenemos actualmente podemos sobrellevar con este tiempo y creo que es una de las formas más sólidas que tenemos en la actualidad con todas las redes sociales y con todo el entorno, el poder llevar estos mensajes en específico.
엠네스티 멤버로서 저는 평등하고 지속 가능한 세상을 추구합니다. 하지만 이러한 상황에서 평등한 세상은 아예 불가능합니다. 지구를 지키는 것은 평등한 세상의 첫걸음이 될 수 있습니다. 평등을 위해, 정의를 위해, 그리고 인권을 위해 우리 다 같이 지구를 보호합시다. 지구를 보호하기 위해 행동합시다.
Creo que todavía estamos en un punto en donde podemos revertir todo el daño que se ha hecho y por lo tanto debemos poner las manos a la obra y hacer el cambio.
Je pense que la question du changement climatique doit préoccuper tout et chacun de nous. Nous vivons dans des contextes différents, mais chacun vit à sa manière les conséquences du phénomène du changement climatique et il est important à ce que nous puissions agir.
As primatologist Jane Goodall once said, you cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make.
In times like these, we need to hold our industry and country accountable for what they've done to our planet. We need to urge our government to ensure that we will have a planet to live on in the future. I guess in times like these, there's just one question that keeps on popping up, and it's that will the prioritization of profit over people ever end? Or are we just going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again until one day we just don't have anywhere else to live?
Young people from all around the world are aware of what they're facing right now. We are aware of environmental and social injustice belonging to a global dehumanizing process threatening the worldwide society. All that represent only more reason to fight for a better world.
We will keep demanding change till we see change. Do better. You are not doing enough. The older generations have failed, so it is our turn to determine what happens next. It's time to act now. Stop drilling where we're living. No more empty promises.
Pourtant, je veux garder espoir. Des projets innovants s'organisent tout autour du globe. Les jeunes sont de plus en plus conscients des enjeux sociaux et environnementaux des années futures. Mais le plus important, à l'image d'aujourd'hui, c'est qu'on se rassemble. Parce qu'ensemble, on peut faire de grandes choses. Et on ne fait que commencer.